Hello to my fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Welcome to the Sagittarius full moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello, Aries Rising. Welcome to Gemini season, and this is your reading for the Sagittarius full moon happening very soon, Thursday the 23rd of May at 5 minutes to midnight. That's when the moon's going to be the fullest if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So let's speak about Gemini. Let's really kind of move with this sort of flow to begin with, and we'll get to the moon in a minute. But this Gemini season that's coming up, that we're sort of standing in right now, is 12 years in the making. The reason I say that is because Jupiter, the planet that brings with it growth and optimism and exaggeration, has just moved into, or will just move into Gemini on the 26th of May. So about 3 days after this full moon, Jupiter will be in Gemini. And that hasn't happened since June 2012 to about July 2013. That was the last 12-month-ish period that Jupiter was in Gemini. And the way that I remember what Jupiter means is by just imagining the look of the planet. So it's the big gas giant full of storms. The Greek name for Jupiter is Zeus, so the Lord of the gods. You know, there's a big growth, a big optimism there with that kind of imagery. The trick is, though, Jupiter isn't so comfortable in the sign Gemini. Jupiter does much better work in opposition in Sagittarius or in Pisces. So in Gemini, it sort of acts out, or it emphasizes perhaps that which we'd prefer maybe not to look at. The significations of Gemini being twins, being the sort of polarity, internal polarity of ourselves. You'll probably notice with a lot of Gemini friends of yours, or if you've got Gemini placements in your chart, that sort of toing and froing of ideas or thought forms, or sometimes arguments. I have a Gemini moon, so my internal workings is really, really turbulent sometimes, and my body really needs to sort of talk things through, express myself through my body's health a lot as well. With that emphasis of Jupiter, there might be a compulsion to emphasize the shadow or emphasize the darkness. When I think back to that chunk of time, June 2012 to July 2013, I do remember a lot of misdirection in my life. I do remember that Jupiter was really exaggerating where I actually needed to be, as opposed to where I was on my path in life. And all manner of different occurrences happened, and there was a point in 2013 where everything felt obvious to me, and I felt much more settled. So let's have a look at your birth chart, Aries Rising, and let's see where Gemini is, and then we'll get to this moon. So Gemini is your third house. In the Hellenistic tradition, the third house was called the house of the goddess. It's where we enact private rituals in our lives, where we learn and we share information with our voice, how we speak to one another. And so you can see there's that sort of great link between Gemini as a sign and your third house as a place. So think about the way that you've been communicating your ideas. Think about who you've been in company with locally, that you've been aligning yourself with, who you've been sharing your time with. And think about the exaggeration that is about to occur, the emphasis on that part of your life. And perhaps that might steer you in a place, or it might reveal things to you that are not particularly helpful any longer. And it might put you back on a different track. That is to say, it might also just really exaggerate and emphasize what is working as well. You know, there's light and shadow to everything. You can't have light without shadow. So pick up the lessons as they come to you. This is a year in the making. So we're going to be experiencing Jupiter in Gemini until next year, until middle of next year. So it starts here. That's the 26th. Let's refocus back to this moon on the 23rd. So before the moon is fullest in Sagittarius, which is in opposition to your third house. So now we're speaking globally. Now we're speaking about grand philosophical teaching and learning. We're thinking about our spirituality. We're thinking about great adventures and great journeys. A full moon in that sign for you, there might be something that is feeling really spotlighted there. You might be on a great trek. You might have reached some sort of cumulative point in your life where you're having some eureka moments right now too. This moon is sort of in a bit of company and has a bit of support from Pluto as well. So there is something about the underworld. There is something about revelations and things being revealed as well that is kind of quite potent at this full moon. But right before, so in the daytime, in the lead up to this full moon, Venus and Jupiter will be exactly conjunct at 29 degrees, the final marker point of Taurus. And so we're going to start to think about what you've been learning about the revolutions around how you resource yourself. We've been speaking about this for a long time now, Aries Rising, and hopefully you can feel the movement. Hopefully you can feel that Jupiter has been exaggerating this part of your life. It's been really focusing on this part of your life for the last year. And now Venus is met up with Jupiter, providing a little sweetness, a little comfort to you at this time. Perhaps there might be some nice big bright ideas that have come to you that then you can take into your communication styles. You might start to speak about these things or workshop these things, all of those ideas and inspirations that have been coming to you. This end of May into June might be the time to start activating some of these hunches that you've been sitting on for a while. Jupiter in Gemini is going to, I think, emphasize the shadow side of how accessible we are on the internet too. I have a real strong feeling about that. You can read about it in the paper already. There's, the governments around the world are sort of clamping down perhaps on the uncontrollable growth or access that social media has to everyone. I think here in Australia, the Prime Minister has just said it should be banned for people under 16, which is going to be very difficult to implement because we've grown so used to it. But I think what Jupiter in Gemini here in this time frame is sort of really reminding us too is that we can learn these habits and learn these systems of accessibility, and we can also quickly unlearn them too. It's only been a decade or so that this growth of over communication has really been occurring. 2012 was smartphone land. That was when I first had one in my hand, I think. Maybe it was 2011. But you can see that sort of development of accessibility. And, in the early days, it was really great to be self-employed and to create network and to create community online. It's gotten to a point where it has turned into a bit of a pokey machine. It's become very addictive for a lot of people. And the after effects of the psychology of these sorts of platforms are really showing up quite strongly. There's lots of studies that are sort of pointing to rising rates in anxiety, very Gemini, rising rates in depression in the youth because of their self-perception and how they're comparing themselves to others, and also the insidious underbelly of bullying on these platforms too. We'll see how the next year unfolds, Aries Rising. We'll see what comes of it and how many of these bills will pass. I know it's contentious in the States at the moment with the lingering TikTok ban, and I do know the uprising of people not wishing to be silenced. However, if you've got something to say, you'll be tenacious enough to find the avenues to say it, and you won't rely on these apps that are just designed to keep you on there and to keep selling to you in the subconscious. It's difficult even to read the paper without ads popping up everywhere. So that's just something to think about, and I think that that's probably something that we all together will be it will be revealed to us, the light and the shadow of this form of intense communication. I completely understand the paradox of me saying this to you through the screen, so it's not lost on me. Let's get you some tarot, I think, Aries, as I collect my thoughts as to what is happening next. So this full moon in Sagittarius on the 23rd, I want you to think big, and I want you to, in some ways, it's very important on this path, on in these journeys that we take with trying to understand ourselves and trying to understand other people and finding the patterns in life. I think the tarot and astrology is a really great pattern finder. Some of us, myself included, can sometimes become a bit obsessed with finding the pattern. And I think with the way that the information is being taught at present, there is a compulsion to become addicted to it and to sort of lose yourself in the wave or wall of information that's out there. Pacing yourself is something that Sagittarius is actually really good at. And you might laugh at me, but I think that, hear me out, as a fire sign, you are the match, Aries Rising. You're the one that starts off this magical quest. Leo is the bonfire of this magic, the all-consuming brightness of the fire. Sagittarius is the magical lessons contained and understood, workshopped, like an altar of candles. There's something so magical about candlelight because it is ferocious, but it's also, when treated with respect, very beautiful and very staid. So maybe you can hopefully use some of that staidness as far as your spiritual quest, as far as what it is that you wish to learn about your life through these. These are just two examples of what I'm talking about. There's philosophies endless for you to sink your teeth into, but this full moon, it might be like a nice a nice evening just for you to sit with what makes you feel centered and what makes you feel calm. I think that would be really great, because I do know how riddled with anxiety someone can become when just continually absorbing, staying up all night, learning, reading, watching, comparing. There's such a easy road into paranoia that we can take when we are, and I'm all for a savant. I'm all for someone, cracking the code. And there's limitless possibilities of what we might learn about in this life. But it's just a question of measuring oneself, I suppose. And perhaps this impending Gemini expansion could have us teeter over to the other side of becoming a conspiracy theorist. No one wants that. That's what these cards are sort of speaking about. And perhaps as I've been telling you this story, Aries Rising, there has been something of these light bulb moments that have been hitting you over time. There has been spiritual practices that you have been feeling soothed by. And there has been something of a greater context for your life, or a greater understanding of yourself and the world around you, the galaxy that has provided you with something that feels like lovely comfort. That takes a quest, that takes a journey to find. You've got to be inquisitive. You've got to try everything in this life. As an Aries rising, you can definitely attest to that. Every trip, every journey. How can I expand the mind further? What more can I learn? That's something so beautifully Aries about you. But it feels like this moment right here, right now, it might be time to celebrate what it is that you do know and what it is that you have collected over time. Because what I can feel is that we're moving into a place where you are going to start to cultivate that knowledge. If we think about this Venus and Jupiter conjunction in your material world, I wish for those seeds that we've been talking about for a while, that we planted at the Taurus new moon. I wish for us to get our sleeves rolled up and to start to plant these and to start to cultivate some growth for you. Because fire and only fire burns up real quick. That's what the earth signs in astrology can teach us, and in the tarot too. This is the Queen of Pentacles. This is someone who has got a great knowledge of patience and of the time it takes and of what each of the seasons do and provide. as well. There's always a job to do, and you probably like that, Aries Rising, but it's a matter of lining them up and doing them when the time is right, because I completely identify with you. You know, jack of all trades, master of none, or just there's too many options, too much choice, I'm overwhelmed, I'll do nothing, I'll just stare at the roof. That's so familiar to me in my life. And I do rely on my earth signness to have me stick to task and have me practice and have me actually learn, rather than just sort of eat it all up and then forget half of it. So yeah, use the light of this Sagittarius full moon to highlight what parts of your spiritual journey are working, and use this Jupiter in Gemini to excavate what parts are not, what's just fluff, what's just making you anxious or making you paranoid. That's your reading, Aries Rising. I hope you enjoyed. If we've not met before and you'd like me to draw your birth chart, they look like this. And you can make an appointment for me to read it to you at my website, umaruby.com. If you'd like to support my work, you can head to buymeacoffee.com and subscribe for 10 Australian dollars a month, or you can put some money in the tip jar there too. I'll be with you to speak about the new moon in Gemini coming up. So Jupiter will already have started to create some sort of influence here. So when it comes to your village, your local environment, the lessons that you're learning through language, how you're actually sharing your knowledge through your voice, let's sow some seeds in a couple of weeks. Much love to you. Hello, Leo Rising. Welcome to Gemini season. And this is your reading for the Sagittarius full moon happening incredibly soon on May the 23rd at 5 minutes to midnight if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So we'll speak about that. We'll also speak about the prelude into that moment, and then also the aftermath too, because this week has some really powerful astrology for us to contend with, and there's a lot of investigation into the past that might inform our future as well. So shifting focus from Sagittarius for the minute, we'll get to that moon soon enough, but I wanted to harness our thoughts into Gemini and what the sign means, and also what's about to come for Gemini too. So Gemini is the twins in astrology. Gemini is that side and that side, a beautiful conversation between two dualities or two polarities, two halves of a whole. Gemini is an air sign, so it's very intellectual, very communicative in its style. There's a longing to know and to understand with Gemini. This Gemini season has been 12 years in the making. So on the 26th of May, so 3 days after the full moon, the planet Jupiter will enter into Gemini. And this hasn't happened since July of 2013. The last trip of Gemini and Gemini and Jupiter was from June 2012 till July 2013. In astrology, the easiest way to remember what Jupiter means is by looking at it. It's big. It's made of gas, it's full of storms, it's expansive, it's bright orange, it's optimistic. And so in astrology, we ascribe all of those traits to the planet. And so wherever Jupiter moves, it emphasizes, it grows. In Sagittarius, it does wonders. In Pisces, it does wonders. In Gemini, it's too far away from its home base to feel incredibly optimistic or useful. And so with that expansion, that growth, you can see that growth at all costs or too much of a good thing are things that we start to speak about, especially in Gemini because of that continual conversation. So what I see for this transit starting on the 26th of May and for the next year after that, so Jupiter will leave Gemini the middle of next year. So we've got 1 year to really examine, emphasize, have a look at our communication styles, how we've been communicating, how we've been sharing ideas, what the culture has been doing with this form of communication that is so quick and so overwhelming, and the design of the interface that is like a slot machine that has us addicted to communicating, learning, reading. There's so much information that's being shared around that is not fact checked, that is not on the basis of research, that's on the basis of reading it once and then passing it forward. In the old days, these forms of communication and having access to folks that you love that live far away, or building community online, building a name for yourself, a vocation online, that's all really great and it still exists. I think that Jupiter in Gemini is really going to emphasize the shadow side of that concept and really, really show us just how much of a shopping mall the internet has become, how we're being sold to by these major platforms subliminally at all times, down to what we're actually consuming because of the back end of the technology that just gives us more of what it thinks that we want, more engagement. That's all it wants, is engagement. That's my prediction. I think that for all of us, it's going to come to a head. We're really going to be met with just how much information we're absorbing from the internet and how much we're actually absorbing and how much is just sort of adding to our anxiety. On your birth chart, Leo rising, Gemini is the sign that rules your 11th house, which is your humanitarian spirit and your sense of belonging in community. So while there's going to be an examination of this part of your life over the next 12 months or so, there'll be some shadow stuff for sure, as we've just sort of gone through. I wonder what the lighter side of things might be as well. I wonder if, when thinking about belonging to some sort of community, there might be a evolution or a extra exertion, extra involvement as far as your voice is concerned. Gemini is a lot about the voice too, about sort of speaking to truth, speaking, their ideas. So maybe there's something in your world that you're growing in confidence to start to speak to as well. Or you might find that you're finding community in spaces that you didn't think that perhaps you belonged or didn't think that you had the credentials for. That's one thing that I'm really looking forward to, is as much as this categorization, everyone seems to have categorized themselves, and we categorize other people so quickly too. We're so quick to name someone's ethnicity or race or gender and box them into a group that belongs to that. We also have done such incredible work to categorize ourselves in order to speak from our lived position. There's a splintering that can sometimes happen in that categorization, where soon enough we'll find that we've boxed ourselves in to, like a beehive, little solo sections. I hope that Jupiter in Gemini in your 11th house will expand upon your community, and perhaps will show you the shadow of these communities, and will perhaps also show you the way through as well. So that's my prediction for Jupiter in Gemini. I don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but you just open the paper and you can already see that the governments are clamping down on something. Pandora's box is open. They can't contain the free-flowing sharing of information. They're trying to, and there's a lot of health professionals that are of the mind that it's damaging to a young brain. So I think even in Australia, social media is looking at being banned for folks under a certain age, which is going to be incredibly difficult to police, but also is going to be, hopefully, as quickly unlearned as it was learned. If Jupiter's journey around the zodiac can teach us anything, the last time that Jupiter was in Gemini was 2012. That was when I was really had my smartphone in my hand and was making a name for myself. That's how it started. That's where it started, to now. And just measuring my own anxiety levels when confronted with social media as a concept. At the moment, I've been staying off it because it's overwhelming for me. It's too much. I've lost intimacy with those that I had it for in the first place, that I wanted to keep intimacy with. So we'll see how that evolves and changes over time. Let's switch back over to the opposite side of Gemini and speak about this moon in Sagittarius. So on the opposite side of your community is yourself, Leo rising. It's where you express yourself as an individual, where you find yourself, where you create with your artistry, and where you find the link between your creativity and your sexuality too. I really believe there's a really strong link between those two things. And I find in my life, when I'm uninspired and when there's a clog in my creative capacity, it has something to do with something elsewhere, and vice versa too. I think that there's a beautiful synergy and a beautiful invitation to experience in the fifth house. So with this spotlight on there, I hope you can enjoy some of that sweetness too. Looking at the way that this sun and the moon is configured, so they're both at 2 degrees, which is the first couple of degrees of each sign. And then Pluto is over here in Aquarius. And so the sun and Pluto are actually speaking to each other in a really helpful way. The way that I look at this on your birth chart, Leo rising, is that the metamorphosis that your relationship styles are going through and will continue to go through, this unearthing, perhaps, of your 7th house, this, perhaps you might be finding this sort of blowtorch disintegration, perhaps of old relationship styles that's beginning to occur. This is informing your 11th house at this moon in a really positive way, in a way that is supportive. So perhaps you found yourself here in these sorts of relationships with these sorts of people, this kind of exchange. You were consumed by these folks in a certain way. Pluto in Aquarius is bulldozing all of that, and it's a 20-year process, so don't fret. But just in this moment, at this moon, with the emotions running high, as they always do at a full moon, I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, that no matter what comes up for you, perhaps you might spend the whole night painting, or perhaps you might spend the whole night making love or enjoying your your erotic power. That might be a beautiful thing to do at this full moon as well. It's different though, isn't it? It's different to how it used to be. And it will continue to evolve. These parts of you are in their process. Jupiter in the 11th house takes a year. Pluto in the 7th house takes 20. So there's a big shift, big change of the old way into the new. So, before that moon is full at midnight, Venus and Jupiter, who still will both be in Taurus, will make a conjunction in the final degree of Taurus. So back up to your public-facing self, your legacy, how people perceive you. Venus, the goddess of beauty and love and artistry and sexuality, is being emphasized by Jupiter. So I wonder how this evening of the full moon, what road it will take you on, and preparing you for Jupiter's entry into Gemini too. It does feel like a big sea change. And I don't want to labor it with too much kind of anxiety for you. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to do. I want you to be open to the possibilities of what this period of your life might hold, might contain. On the 30th of May, Mars, the planet of bravery, will be conjunct with Chiron, our wounded healer. So we're looking at this latent, possibly spiritual trauma or religious trauma, or perhaps the ways in which you used to relate to your spirituality that caused a lot of pain, or you felt a lot of pain in those sorts of circles. I know for a lot of people, myself included, it's so difficult sometimes to be honest with our philosophies on faith and spirituality. And I will say too, Leo, that you're not called to speak to these things. In fact, as public as the 9th house can seem, your relationship with your spirituality is very private and is open to evolution too. It can change. What this configuration between bravery and pain looks like to me is an ability to face it, an ability to sort of register perhaps how you were affected by people in religious or spiritual power, and how you're going to incorporate the faith and hope in your life that smells more like autonomy, that smells more like you're in charge of your own faith, your own spirituality. You don't look to any sort of guru or healer or grander figurehead to provide you with that salvation. It's up to you. You've got this already. Big end of the month leading into June. It's quite sort of, it does, and I think it's just that, you know, whenever one of the outer planets shifts signs, we all do take a look. And it's good to look around. It's good to register how you've been feeling with this level of communication at your fingertips, with this amount of information, how many screen hours, you know, I don't know if you've got that ability on your devices to check how long you've, you know, what's your average weekly screen time. It can be really confronting when you're met with that information, because it's just a fact. It's like, yes, you're 9 hours a day. For some people, it's more. And of course, you know, you're working too. We're all working. These are our tools of the trade now as well, these screens. But I think over the next 12 months, we're really going to be able to register how good or not this devotion to the digital world is for our health. Storms ahead. Storms ahead, but there's a clearing. What I'd love for you to do, Leo Rising, is to really have a think about your... okay, here we go. Think about everything that I've just said as far as the information that you've been absorbing, the conversations that you've been engaging in, the way that all of this digital stuff has been affecting your world outlook. Because what I see here in the very center of these three cards is something that looks a bit like deception, and it looks like a untruth that has been given on purpose, a lie. And I'm not chastising anyone or accusing anyone in your world that they're lying to you. I think that I just wanted to emphasize this idea that you know that you've got a really good sense of right and wrong and the truth and bullshit. And so tune into that bullshit detector right now, Leo Rising, because there's something here that's calling you to attention. In the past, there was sentimentality sort of running rampant. There was really incredible offers of bravery and connection and love that I can see here. And this isn't to say that they're all bullshit, but this is the story that's being painted. We're moving into a place that has you feeling a little exhausted, that has you feeling kind of wrung out. And I know that feeling really well. And the tarot teaches us that we are still standing and that we still have the strength enough to continue. But you can see after all of this, I won't say emotional manipulation, but I definitely will say dishonesty. This level of dishonesty has led you into a place where you're second guessing your output, you're second guessing your abilities. And these tarot cards are telling you, reminding you that your abilities are strong, that they're in tune. And this astrology is sort of speaking to this idea of being about ready to go. So what I'd like you to do is to cut through the noise and to stop limiting yourself. If you're thinking to yourself, I'm not enough of this or that or the other to express myself in this way, the moon is wanting to express yourself in the way that you are. No amount of checklist is going to have your validity. What am I trying to say? Come on. You're welcome here, Leo Rising. You're welcome here with your level of experience in this life, your self-perception, your relationship with your own essence, I believe to be the truth. And there's, I'm growing wearier and wearier and wearier of folks policing one another, because I thought we were moving away from that. I thought that we were really believing the philosophies of, a freer state of being. I thought that was the offer that was being given to us, was that there was room for growth and expansion for all of our souls, for all of our personas. And it just feels at the moment that there's so much policing independently. Folks feel righteous enough to call out this or call out that or shut this down because from your experience with this body, you're not to speak on this issue. Work from your compassion, work from your heart. Remember, you're a Leo rising. You're always telling the truth if you're listening to hear. I believe you. Fuck 'em. Whatever. That's your reading. Love you, babe. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, I will draw you one. They look like this. And you can make your appointment at umaruby.com. If I have read for you before and you'd like to see me again, have a think about the topics of truth, love, growth, femme, or magic. There might be just a buzzword in there that has you thinking, yeah, I really want to speak to Uma about magic. I want to speak to Uma about love. I want to speak to Uma about the feminine principle. Whatever it is that you need, babe, I'm here for you. So make an appointment. You can support my work at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. You can subscribe to the work for $10 a month, or you can just put some money in the tip jar. And if you're still here with me, Leo Rising, put a golden heart in the comments, please. That would be lovely. Thank you very much. In honor of everything that we're trying to be honest about. I'll speak to you soon and we'll plant that seed in your community. We'll plant that golden potential for you to feel back in touch with a sense of community and a sense of belonging in social space. So until then, I love you. Bye. Hello, Sagittarius Rising. Welcome to Gemini season. And welcome to your reading for the Sagittarius full moon happening moments away on Thursday, the 23rd of May at 5 minutes to midnight if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So we've got time, and I've also got a bunch of information that precedes and concludes this moon as well. I've got info up until the 1st of June or so to share with you. So before we start to think about this full moon in your first house, which is always a great invitation to take it chill, to be as alone as you need to, but that's up to you, and really kind of sit with what your opinion of yourself is, and then go a little bit deeper and understand the truth of who you are, to be kind to yourself at a full moon in the first house. It can be overwhelming sometimes, depending on what that relationship, how it's sitting for you at the moment. Sometimes it can be really expansive and really beautiful and incredible. And sometimes it can be a little bit stickier and a little bit sorer, a bit softer and more vulnerable. So I'll leave that up to you. Whatever it is, I want you to remember that I think you're great and I think you're doing a really awesome job. And all of the Sagittarian parts of you, we can go over. But I wanted to cast our eye in opposition. So Sagittarius, the first house, Gemini, the 7th house, you, them. Let's think about them for a minute. Let's think about your relationships, your loved ones, the people that you hold dear in this life. This isn't to say that they're all Geminis, but it's just a matter of taking that flavor, taking that costume of Gemini and understanding what you need in relationships, your relationship style and the style of others, how it works best. Gemini teaches us that your relationships work best with communication. Now that sounds like the obvious, every relationship does, but there's an emphasis here that's really swelling, and I'll tell you why. So a couple of days after this full moon in your first house, on the 26th of May, the planet Jupiter will enter into Gemini. Now, to think about what that means in astrology, think about the image of Jupiter. Think about its size, what it's made of, which is gas, and think about the qualities, which are expansive, ignition, like that sort of magnification, exaggeration of the image of the gassy planet. The Greek name for Jupiter is Zeus as well, so the king of the gods. There's something quite grand and huge about this. Wherever Jupiter goes, Jupiter does just that, expands, magnifies. As a Sagittarius rising, Jupiter is the planet that is guiding you along. So when you think about how optimistic you can be, when you think about how hopeful and how willing you are to give things a try, how much faith that you have as well, your access to hope, we can look to Jupiter for those qualities about you. So Jupiter is going to be in your 7th house. The thing about astrology is when a planet is in the opposite sign to where it normally does really great work, which is you, it can lead to snafus, or it can lead to it not being able to access its power in the way that it usually would. So for Jupiter in Gemini, this is that story. Jupiter's not so comfortable in Gemini. So when we think about growth, when we think about expansion, when we think about size, what are the shadow aspects of that? I can think of a couple straight off the top of my head. I think the philosophy of growth at all costs is rapidly showing its faults, its vulnerabilities. We know that things can't go on like this forever, right? Sagittarius rising, we can't keep taking from the planet in the way that we do. We can't keep consuming in the way that we consume. We're also reliant on this rapidly evolving virtual world that it just seems like too much. When I think about Gemini, separate to your birth chart maybe, on a more global scale, I do think about the way that we communicate with one another and the way that we share information. And I think that Jupiter entering into Gemini at this time is going to extrapolate or magnify the shadow side of that, the way that all of our communication has been monetized by these big tech companies that are earning their billions, squillions from us arguing with each other or yelling at each other or becoming addicted to the pokies that Instagram, TikTok, all of them have become. It's just this rolling shutter of images and talking heads. Hilarious that I'm speaking to you about this through the screen. I get it. I really do. This is what I think for the next year we're really going to be contending with, and it's going to be our job to figure out the possibilities and the benefit of this interconnected way of communicating, but also really examine the shadow. And the Australian government's already publicly said that social media should be banned for folks under 16, and that's going to be a difficult thing to put forward. But if Jupiter in Gemini can teach us anything, that we can learn these things and become reliant on them very quickly, I wonder if we can become unreliant on them just as quickly. Because when I think about June 2012, when the last time Jupiter entered into Gemini was June 2012 to July 2013, that was its year of emphasis in Gemini. I think to myself, that's when I had my smartphone, that's when I was really, getting on there, communicating, networking, keeping relationships that were scattered across the world, but developing a name and a face for myself as I was a stripper and a performer back in those days. There was a lot of light, but there was also a lot of darkness too, because so quickly we become hinged to it. We become attached to it. I think now more than ever, the pandemic definitely showed us the beginnings of this, but Jupiter in Gemini is really going to emphasize the shadow of this ultra communication and this way that we are also stuck to the screen. On your birth chart, I'd love for you to think about your relationship styles, how you were engaging in intimacy in June 2012 to July 2013. What came to you about the light of those coupling styles, those relationship styles, and the darkness of those relationship styles? Think about the people in your life. Think about what they were going through. Perhaps there was moments in that time, Sagittarius rising, that your lovers, your close-knit few really needed you, or there was an emphasis perhaps on their shadow, and that sort of had you evolve and sort of change the way that you connect with other people, and hopefully for the better. Because ultimately that's what Jupiter wants, is sort of hopefully for the better, uncomfortable, I'll just emphasize it all, highlight everything. You figure it out. What I like about Gemini is that if we talk about it, we'll solve it. And that's the best thing that Gemini has to offer, I think. I mean, lots of other qualities too, but that gift of the gab is really Gemini. So let's kind of sit with that just for a moment, that from the 26th, the rest of this year and half of next year, there's going to be an emphasis on how you communicate with those that you love. So let's unearth and excavate some possibilities together around that topic. I'm going to get you some tarot, I think, Sagittarius, just as I look at what else is going on. So, yes. Mars, bravery, valiancy, is going to meet up with Chiron, the wounded healer, in Aries on the 30th of May. So a few days after Jupiter enters Gemini, Mars, in its home sign, its home base, where Mars is most effective, will be meeting up with Chiron, that wounding. So I'd like to think about your relationship with your artistry, with your creativity, with your sexuality, the self-expressive side of you, that lingering pain. And there's been so much with the eclipses and everything that we've been speaking about this sort of urgency to go there and to perhaps unearth some of this stuff. Something that feels like bravery is hitting that point too on the 30th. So maybe with this great deep work that you've been doing around your agency, around your sexual agency, your creative agency, around your ability to stand by your ethics and to stand by, to have the courage of your convictions, I think is what this coupling is really speaking to. So hopefully, and we've still got more to contend with Aries for next eclipse season, etc., etc. But hopefully this feels like a bit of progress too. And maybe it's actually probably in some way informing or speaking to your 7th house of your relationships, where this Jupiterian emphasis will sit for the next year. So many of us have a difficult time expressing our needs. Some of us don't. Some of us have a really easy time expressing our needs. Some of us have a very difficult time, and I'll leave that to you as to sort of pinpoint where that sort of started to happen. And it can happen over, years and years. We sort of fall into similar coupling styles or similar relationship styles, or what does my mum say? You teach people how to treat you after a while. And that's a bitter pill to swallow sometimes, because you're like, well, everyone's treating me like shit. Like, why? It's just a matter of kind of unearthing when you first learned that you need to zip it to receive love. That could be something, or that what you had to communicate, the way that you communicate and express love and connection, was rejected in some way as well. And that had you be like, well, if I just don't communicate that, if I don't communicate my needs or my truer relationship styles, then no one will leave. That's something that I sometimes think about too. That fear of conflict that some of us have. We just sort of dissociate, because sort of like, I can't actually deal with this level of contention. I'm just going to press the ejector button and get out of here. You can't do that in your own relationships, because then you just leave them there and you over there. That's just one thing to think about. You know that feeling? Okay, so I've got the 9 of Cups, the Death, and the 8 of Cups for those playing at home. I'm just going to hold the Death card as I speak about this. We can get used to things, as I said before, we can get used to things really quickly. And so in that way of the way that folks are relating to social media and how that's affecting the culture, but we're so reliant on it, so how could we possibly imagine an existence without it? We can do that in other ways too. We can do that in the way of being alone and becoming sort of used to that and feeling that we're kind of better off alone. Now, I'm of the mind that ain't nobody out there is going to fill a void if that's what you're looking to plug up. I'm of the mind of everyone has a different romantic style, and monogamous love isn't for everybody. I'm of the mind that some folks need time to rest and time to really start romancing and being with themselves. That's what the Nine of Cups really speaks to, this idea of like tending to one's own needs and really kind of weighing up what you've learned about your emotional capacity over time and how that's affected you and how that's made you the person that you are. But as long as you've got good love for yourself, then you're going to be okay. The Nine of Cups really encourages love for oneself as well. This is a transformative central moment here. And it's leading us to the Eight of Cups. So 2 steps forward, 3 steps back is what I see here. Sagittarius rising. It's all right. That's what progress is, isn't it? You know, move forwards, you know, move backwards. You can see it in the culture too. The valiant steps ahead as far as visibility and as far as social justice and as far as, you know, the rights of the individual and, humanitarian spirit. Moves forward, it moves backwards in this culture. Right now we're standing in the center of something that feels really regressive. What I like about the Eight of Cups, though, is that some folks can see abandonment. They can see running away, dropping everything and hoiking out of here. Other folks can look at this card, though, and they can see another quest beginning. So what I see here is this contentment, or this contending with yourself, tending to your wounds, listening to yourself, reacquainting yourself with yourself. And then I see something that changes. I see something that starts again, and perhaps a journey to go out and to reclaim that missing cup, to make it 9 again. Perhaps there's been some sort of falter in the way that you do relate to your self-loving capacity, and you need to make another journey to go out there and remember where the other cup is to make it a 9 again. Or perhaps this is something that's starting fresh and you're like, right, okay, well, this is life as it stands on my own 2 feet. Love it, love my life, love everything. I wonder who I'll meet next. I'll leave that up to you as to what this story is beginning. Sagittarius rising, but I think this emphasis in your 7th house of your relationships will help to jog your memory too. That's it. If you're still here with me, Sag, please put a golden heart in the comments in honor of all of the bravery and honesty and love that we're about to engage in. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, I'll draw you one. They look like this. You can make your appointment at umaruby.com to speak with me. If I have read for you before and you'd like to see me again, choose a truth, magic, love, femme, or growth reading. I'll be with you soon and we'll speak about the seed. Actually, those tarot cards are telling me another story too, because the next moon is a new moon in Gemini, a place where we hope, where we wish, where we imagine. So if we're imagining about your relationship styles, about your coupling, about what the relationships you have, how you'd like to see them evolve, or what are the new ones coming forward, remember that Jupiter will be in there too. So there's an emphasis here on the other for you, Sagittarius. Maybe you've been feeling a bit sort of cloistered in this solo mission. That's been essential, but maybe it's about time to mingle a little. I'll leave that up to you. And I'll speak to you soon. You take care.